Death doula says that God, humanity, and the future is not what you think. Feels like we're out here and then we're like controlling these physical bodies. But before we decide to utilize a human body as a vehicle, as we're souls and spirits first, we come to Earth because there are so many experiences to have, both good and bad. People who are engaging in war are learning something from that. They're gaining an experience from that. War is something that we get to experience. It's horrendous, but it's something Earth offers. Okay, so we come here knowing that that is something that is offered. There are people who feel the need on a soul level to better understand what it feels like to learn new perspectives, to recognize that we really are all connected. And one way to do that is through war. War offers a lot of really great experiences through the challenge of war. Hi everyone, I'm Helen Gretchen Jones. I am an intuitive, a death doula, and a channel. I work with patients and help them to transition from their physical life and into the spirit world. I am in Central Texas in the United States, and I'm so happy to be here today to share some of my experiences with you. So a death doula is a relatively new position. It came about when there's been a big shift in our changing healthcare system, and nurses used to sit beside patients a lot, but now they have more responsibilities and paperwork that they have to take care of, and sitting beside patients is becoming harder and harder to fit into their schedule. So a death doula is someone who can come in, sit with patients who are dying, and hopefully to help bring them peace and closure before their final moments. I first became interested in becoming a death doula. It was actually just a little after my father's death in 2015. When he transitioned, he was young, he was only in his 50s, and his death was unexpected for a lot of my family members, especially one of my sisters. And when he transitioned, there was a lot of unfinished business and closure that didn't get to happen between him and my sister. And when I learned about a death doula bringing peace and closure to patients and families, I wanted to be a part of that because I was hoping to not allow what happened. If I could have some kind of help, if I could help families not have what happened between my dad and one of my sisters, then I wanted to be a part of that. So that's exactly what I do now. When I'm having the process of an experience with the death doula, there's a lot of things that happen, but one of the most important things that's happening for me, bedside of my patients, are the spiritual occurrences. I have always had a connection to spirit and to, angels or God or universe or whatever word works best for you, but I utilize that connection with spirit with the person who's transitioning. So oftentimes, when a person is diagnosed with a terminal illness, they first try to fight it. They try to find ways to beat the illness and keep death at bay. But when it becomes apparent that that's not going to happen and that this illness is indeed terminal, they find acceptance and they start to, kind of tie up loose ends. They start to give their possessions away. They hopefully start to say things that they need to say for closure before they transition, but that's also the stage where fear sets in. A lot of people fear different aspects of dying. Am I going to be in pain? Is it going to hurt? I'm afraid of the last breath. What happens right after I die? All of these things are questions that I get asked all the time. So as I'm allowing myself to sit with these patients, I will see, and so will the patient, a deceased loved one, an angel, a being of light. Someone comes in and starts to visit with these patients in the last week or two before their death. And when that happens, it actually alleviates the fear around death for the patient, and it also brings hope to the friends and family that are with that patient that this isn't going to be the final goodbye, that there is something that happens after we die. And so that is, I have many patient experiences where I have shared death experiences with them, but that is the basic process of what it feels like to be sitting beside a dying patient. I am going to share a story that one of my favorite stories is a story about Mrs. Wilma. Mrs. Wilma was a patient through NODA. NODA stands for No One Dies Alone. It's a hospital-based program for people who maybe never had kids, or they're the last of their kind, or maybe they burned all those bridges and nobody wants to be there next to them as they're dying. Whatever the reason, they need volunteers to come in and sit with people who are dying alone. So I signed up for a shift and I go in and sit with Mrs. Wilma. Mrs. Wilma was an elderly Black woman. She was Baptist. And knowing that information about her, I put church music on. I put hymns on my phone just so she can hear that. Even though she was already unconscious, I wanted to. The hearing is one of the last senses to go, so I wanted her to have some peace with music as she was transitioning. But when I laid my hands on her and I set the intention or a prayer to connect to her, a younger version of Mrs. Wilma walked in the room. She was about 10 or 12 years old. She was wearing a dress. Her hair was twisted into pigtails. And she walked over to me and took my other hand. And when that happened, the hospital room transformed into this incredible, tall, expansive forest. Every tree in that forest glowed light from the inside out. It emanated light. Every leaf on every tree emanated life. And she said, "We're going to climb this tree." And I don't know how we did it, but really we just sort of thought about it, and we were bam at the top of the tree. We didn't actually go through the process of climbing it. We were just there. And as I was at the top of the tree, I could see all the way around me, 360 degrees, and yet I was only looking straight ahead, so that was an unusual experience. But she said, "This one tree believes that it is one life, and every branch on this tree believes that it's its own life, and every single leaf on this tree believes that it is its own life. But really it's all connected. Every leaf is connected to the branch. Every branch is connected to the trunk of that tree, and every single root is connected to that tree, but all of it believes it is separate. But in reality, it's all one. It's all one life. And this one tree also believes that it is its own life, but really it's connected to all the other trees in this forest. And this forest is part of a larger ecosystem. So her teaching before she transitioned was all about connection and our unity and how we are all connected all the time. Mrs. Wilma also gave me this awareness, this sort of download of information that she was teaching, that she had a life of separation. In our country, she grew up segregated, separate from other people in our community because of her skin color. And then she had all these different times in her life where she was separated from family. And then now here she was dying alone, once again separate from family. So when you hear about all the segregation and separation, your heart goes out to her a little bit. But the truth was, she learned about connection through the understanding of separation. And that's really a beautiful story, and I love that connection and that experience with Mrs. Wilma. I channel information from my team in spirit, but really the experience with Mrs. Wilma was a shared death experience. My channeling comes in from my team in spirit, who I call A-Team. I have had a connection to A-Team my entire life. I didn't always call them that. I just called them spirit for a long time. But when I was a very little girl and I would feel overwhelmed in my home or not feeling completely heard or safe in some way, I would retreat to a bathtub. And nobody would bother me in the bathroom, so I can sit in an empty bathtub and just focus on the silence. And that's what I did. Meditation is not something that is practiced by my family, and I'm sure they may not even have known what the word was, 40 years ago. But when I would go into the bathtub and I would just focus on silence, oftentimes my team in spirit would come through and they would tell me everything was going to be okay. And they would ask me questions, and they would give me little loving words of encouragement and support that were always very welcoming by me. I wanted more of that. So as I got older, I gave my team in spirit a name. I call them now A-Team. And when I told my husband about A-Team, he was like, "Do you mean the 1980s crime-fighting TV series?" I guess there was a TV series called A-Team. And I thought, oh no, I'd given my team a really lame name and I wanted to change it. And I told them I wanted something that meant oneness or singular or something that represented a collective. And I ended the meditation, was waiting on a new name for my team in spirit. I go to take my cat to the vet, and as I'm pulling in, all the parking spots are being blocked by a temporary dumpster being delivered. And in big, bold white letters on the side of the dumpster, it said A-Team. And it was in that moment that I recognized that A-Team means, A means singular or one in the English language, and that we are a collective, we're a team, and they need me as much as I need them, and we work together for the highest and greatest good for all of us. So now when I connect to spirit, I try to channel the words that come through, and I call the team that I channel, I call them A-Team. So when I sit very quietly, after a little while, A-Team can come through and they have beautiful, validating messages of hope and love and self-expression and truth. And so that's how I channel A-Team. Typically, the different messages or experiences that I have with the channeled information that's coming from A-Team, it actually varies a lot. So some people ask if A-Team ever gives predictions about the future, and they do in many ways. So I use A-Team and their channeled messages when I sit down to do an intuitive guided session with someone. So if someone comes to me and we're doing an intuitive session together, I will tune in to my team in spirit, A-Team, and they're usually asking for potential outcomes for their future. It's really important to share that A-Team says that your future is never written in stone. It is how you get there, what choices you make. You have free will. That is always there. So if someone tells you this is absolutely going to happen and you can't change it, I would question that a little bit, because A-Team says we can always change it in some way. So what happens is I will see little lines like gold threads or gold lines coming off of a person. And if they ask a question like, should I take the job in New York? Let's say they ask that question. Or should I take the job in California? Those are their two options and they're really struggling with it. I would tune into A-Team, and when they talk, the gold light or strand would light up even brighter. Now, all that means is you as a soul have put energy into creating that job in New York, or have put energy into creating that job in California. You have co-created that experience. So if it lights up, it's only lighting up for me to see through channeled messages of A-Team, show me the threads of light, because you have put energy into it. Now, the one that lights up the brightest, I can say, look, New York is lighting up the brightest. And if you don't like that, then you can change the steps that you are currently taking, the intention you are currently making, the path you are currently on. You can shift that if you'd rather take the job in New York. But if you like the idea, in California, but if you like the idea of taking a job in New York, then stay doing exactly what you're doing, because it's lighting up so bright and you're co-creating that potential for you. So yes, A-Team can make potential and probable and possible predictions, but it's never set in stone. You get to choose how it's going to be based on where you put your focus. They also, I don't know how to explain this, but they also don't have they have such great unconditional love. So they don't have a judgment over what we would deem as something really, really awful. So when someone does a really horrible act to another human or an animal, they're non-judgmental about it. For them, it's about the experience itself. And they insist that on a soul level, that person who did that horrible act is perfect and beautiful and unconditionally loved. So while we set up rules and boundaries and what we deem negative and positive, that's what we are putting onto it, onto our laws of life, on what we think life should look like and what's good and bad for human. But the truth is, on a soul level, A-Team absolutely insists that we are all loved unconditionally and everything that we do is perfect, and that what we are doing here is simply experiencing. So those are the types of messages that I channel through A-Team. So I had done a meditation and I spoke with A-Team and I was questioning about time. And I wanted to better understand how time worked because they keep saying that time isn't what we think it is. So here in our human bodies, we deem time as linear, a beginning and an end. And thank goodness we do, because we're in these bodies and we want to be able to end this experience at some point, or it would just keep going on forever. So we use time as a tool to end our experience here. But during that experience, I spiraled out of my body and I ended up in sort of this dark room that was somehow also lit and also with a backdrop of stars. It was like I was in outer space somehow. And as I'm in this room, I'm met by a spirit, a being of light, and they're showing me New York in its current time. It was like this giant globe, glowing globe, and they zoomed in on New York. It was like we zoomed in on it. And as they did that, I was able to see New York now, New York in the past, New York before any buildings or anything was on it, and also New York far into the future as a probable timeline, not one that was written in stone. But what they were showing me was that it was all happening now. Every single thing, the past of our human collective, the future of our human collective, it's all happening in the present moment. And everything shifts and changes based on how our collective perceives its focus, how we are focusing on our experience here. So the future of our world has already happened or is happening right now, and so is the past, and it is able to change both the past and the future with every single present moment that we experience. So the future of us is already happening. It's happening now. So yes, I have seen the future, but really the future is right now. Mostly the information that I channel when referring to, the big shift or, the future new world and that type of those type of messages, A-Team really brings me back to the present moment. And while they are aware and can validate, and they have validated, that we are shifting as a collective, they tell me that we're always shifting, that we're always changing, and that there's always something new and exciting that's being co-created or recreated or created. So as far as this big shift or this big giant change that we're all experiencing, A-Team hasn't really gone that deep into it because they always pull me back to the present moment, and that the present moment is changes our past and our future. So is there a big shift coming? Yeah, probably so. Does A-Team want to chime in on it? Not really. They really want to talk about the present moment, and they remind me all the time that our world is constantly changing, and that there isn't one big definitive moment that they have expressed as of yet that's going to just change everything, because it's always changing. So sometimes a question comes up on whether or not there's going to be a natural, force that happens, Gaia or Mother Earth having earthquakes or volcanoes or blizzards or tsunamis or something that's going to somehow purify the earth. A-Team has never shown me a time where that's going to happen in my physical life. Currently, my human form is Gretchen. it also doesn't mean that it isn't going to happen. They just haven't shown me that. Um, it's a very common fear, but if I were to take the teachings of A-Team and then apply it to my understandings as a human, I would say that if we wanted to create a natural disaster of some sort, we certainly can as a collective. We can co-create that together. But having a fear around something sort of, gives you the building blocks to create it if you really wanted to. If you don't want to focus on natural disasters, then don't shift your focus there, because that's sort of like throwing building blocks into the ring a little bit. A-Team is always telling me that you are where you focus. So if we put a lot of focus on natural disasters, I'm sure we can create a whole lot more of them. We are, however, it would appear, a lot of people want to point out that the world is going through a lot of natural disasters, more than what they think was happening in the past. We have, big forest fires and earthquakes and flooding and different things that are happening. I don't know if that's to purify the earth per se, but maybe it is. I haven't received that message. But I do believe it is a reflection of how we are feeling as a collective. We are feeling the need to shift and change. We are feeling the need to sort of start fresh, like a phoenix burns down to the ashes and reemerges again. I think as a collective, a human collective worldwide, we are feeling the need to start again, to begin anew. And that's, I think, how we co-create these natural disasters. So is it being done to us? No, I believe we are creating it all for us. That's sort of how I would interpret the teachings I have received in the past from A-Team. Sometimes people will ask questions on whether or not how humans are fighting and engaging in war, and how that's going to affect the future. And it's my understanding that as spirits, as souls, who we are before we come into these physical, before we start focusing into these human bodies, because honestly, it feels like we're out here and that we're like controlling these physical bodies. But before we decide to utilize a human body as a vehicle, as we're souls and spirits first, we come to Earth because there are so many experiences to have, both good and bad. People who are engaging in war are learning something from that. They're gaining an experience from that. War is something that we get to experience. It's horrendous, but it's something Earth offers. Okay, so we come here knowing that that is something that is offered. There are people who feel the need on a soul level to better understand what it feels like to learn new perspectives, to recognize that we really are all connected, and one way to do that is through war. War offers a lot of really great experiences through the challenge of war. Then there's also, other horrible acts that could happen, to people. But again, it comes right back to it. In the end, you've got to experience that. And even though our human might be hurt, on a soul level, we are never hurt. We are not in pain. And our experience here on Earth is temporary. But we came here to experience duality. We came here to experience the positive and negative, the good and bad, as we create it. So it isn't a horrible thing to have happen. It is to our human, but on a soul level, we get to experience that. And I think that when you witness other people going through deep challenges, whatever they are, it opens you up to a new perspective, to a new level of compassion, to a new level of connection to your fellow human. So all of these experiences actually serve the greater good. So it is my understanding that every future that we have is positive on a soul level. No matter the challenge, that however many challenges it took to get us to where we are, our future is positive, because our future is what we create from our current moment. there really isn't a future, there really isn't a past in that way. There are memories and there are goals that we want for ourselves, but everything is happening right here, right now, and we get to choose the direction of our creations and our focus when we are in the present moment. So does our future look positive? Well, mine does, because that's where I'm putting my focus. And so I don't know that there can be a negative outcome, because even in the challenges, even in those negative, hard moments, there's beauty, just like with the story with Mrs. Wilma from earlier. She was experiencing segregation and separation and even dying alone, or what she perceived as alone. But the truth was, her big understanding in the end was it wasn't about separation at all. It was about connection. So even through our challenges and our hardships, there's something beautiful. So I think that, yes, our future is positive. So sometimes when I talk to A-Team, I try to get a better understanding of God. And I get frequently asked during intuitive readings if God actually exists. And this is a really common question. And I would say, yes, God exists. Now, is God a man sitting in a throne judging our actions in the clouds? No, that's not God. My understanding of God is that once we give it a name, such as God, we're already limiting it. But because we're here and we're human, I will do my best to make God sound as expansive as possible without limiting it. God is everything. God is all that is. God is, that's it, God is. And we are all aspects of God. We are every single molecule, every atom, every particle, every wave, everything is God. So when you're asking God to help you, when you're asking, if you're thanking God for all that you have, whatever it is, you're actually thanking all that is. You are recognizing your part in this whole experience, and everything is connected, everything is God. So yes, there's a God, and God is everything. And we are God experiencing itself. We are all God just experiencing itself outside of its physical, whatever it is. It's everything. Our God in the Bible, I mean, I could ask different pastors and preachers, and we're going to get different answers. So even in one faith, there's going to be different perspectives around God. There will be some people that claim, God is in some way human-like because we were made in his image, and that Jesus is the Son of God, right? So then you've got that perspective. There are some people who will recognize that Jesus is sort of like a messenger or someone who is able to tune into all that is and have beautiful teachings. So, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion based on my experience with my channelings from 18, we are God. God is everything. So is God the God in the Bible? Yes, because we created it. Is God a different God? Yes, because we created it. God is like that. There's an Eastern proverb, I believe, that says, it's like the waves in the ocean. God is the ocean, and every personality, every human is like the wave that comes up, has its experience or its life in human form, and returns to the ocean. God is everything, and God is all that is, and every experience, every wave comes in and returns to God because we are God. So if our human collective has decided, if humanity has decided that it needs natural disasters to sort of start over again, which I don't think we need to, but if our collective puts so much focus in that area and that were to happen, I don't know that there is a way to prepare for that, because it's what you want. It's what we want as a collective, or it wouldn't happen. It's what we're creating. So I think one of my gifts as a death doula is I get a ballpark on when someone has decided to transition, for example. And I think that this is important to note that I will hear from a team, oh, they have 3 weeks, oh, they have 4 years, oh, they have 2 months, something like that. And the only reason that that information is relevant is because on a soul level, that person, I believe, has made the choice to die, to transition. And their human may not be aware of it, or their human may not want that. But on a soul level, they have made that choice, and then I'm able to pick up on that wave of information or that packet of information that is just available. So if humanity were to choose a big natural disaster to, start everything over, then I would assume that a lot of those people have made the choice to transition. So it isn't about preparing. If you're meant to transition, you're going to. And if you're not going to. It's really that simple.